The Galactic Council chamber on Astra Prime was never quiet. Delegates from 100 different worlds argued day and night. The air always buzzed with voices, translators humming in every ear. But today was different. Today, the chamber was silent. Commander James Carter stood in the center of the Great Hall. The curved walls shimmered with pale blue light. Tall glass panels showed the stars outside. The floating banners of the Council's member worlds hung high above. James looked around the room. Every eye was on him. Chancellor Vorin Drax stood at the highest platform. He was tall, with sharp black eyes and silver skin that shimmered in the light. His voice was cold when he spoke. "Commander Carter," Vorin said, breaking the silence. "Do you deny that Earth has cut all communication with this council?" James swallowed hard. His heart pounded in his chest. "I do not deny it," James replied, his voice steady but heavy with confusion. "I have received no word from Earth in 6 days. No response. No signal. Nothing." Gasps filled the chamber. Vorin leaned forward. "And you expect us to believe you know nothing of this betrayal?" James took a deep breath. He had served as Earth's voice in the Council for 12 years. He had stood in this room and worked for peace among the stars. Now, even his own people had left him in the dark. "I don't know what's happening," James said, feeling the weight of every stare. "I swear it." A low hum filled the room as council delegates whispered to one another. News had already spread through the star systems. Earth had activated a giant energy shield around the solar system. No ship could enter or leave. Messages bounced off the barrier like pebbles against glass. No one knew why. "Earth has turned its back on us all," Vorin declared. "They hide behind a wall of energy. We cannot reach them. They do not answer our calls." James clenched his fists. "There must be a reason. Let me go to Earth. Let me speak to my people. I can fix this." Vorin's lips curled into a thin smile. "No, Commander. You are to remain here. You will answer to the Council until this matter is settled." The words hit James like a punch to the chest. He felt the walls closing in. He had served with loyalty. Now they treated him like a prisoner. 2 council guards stepped forward. Their armored boots echoed in the silent hall. James raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I'm not your enemy," James said quietly. Vorin said nothing. He only turned his back and walked away. The guards led James down the long hallway. His mind raced. What was Earth doing? Why had they shut him out? As they reached the exit, James looked over his shoulder one last time. The council chamber was alive again, filled with loud voices and rising fear. The great doors closed behind him with a deep, final hiss. Commander James Carter sat in a cold, empty room. The walls were bare metal. No windows. No sound. Only a soft hum from the lights above. The council had placed him under protection. That was their word for it. But James knew what it really meant. He was under watch. A prisoner without chains. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to think. Why had Earth locked itself away? Why had they cut him off? He had always served with loyalty. He had spent years here, working for peace. Now, they had left him to face the council alone. The door hissed open behind him. James stood quickly, ready for another guard. But instead, a familiar face appeared. "Vera," James whispered in shock. Vera Tao, an alien scientist with deep blue skin and bright silver eyes, stepped inside. She closed the door softly and locked it. James had known her for years. She had helped him in the past with small council missions. She had always been a friend. "What are you doing here?" James asked, keeping his voice low. Vera glanced over her shoulder, then moved closer. "There's no time to explain everything. You need to come with me." James frowned. "Come with you?" "Vera, I'm being held here." She leaned in, her voice urgent. "I know. That's why I came. The council isn't telling the full truth, James. You need to see something." James hesitated for only a moment before he nodded. He trusted Vera more than anyone left on Astra Prime. If she was risking herself to find him, it had to be serious. They slipped out of the room through a back door. Vera moved fast, leading him through hidden halls beneath the council chambers. She used a small device to block the cameras as they passed. They walked in silence until they reached a locked data room deep underground. Vera placed her hand on the scanner. The door opened with a hiss. Inside, Rows of data screens covered the walls. Vera pulled up a file. It glowed red, marked Council Eyes Only. "What is this?" James asked, stepping closer. Vera took a deep breath. Proof. Proof of what the Council has been doing to Earth. She tapped the screen, showing images and reports. James stared in disbelief. The files revealed massive energy harvesters hidden deep under Earth's surface. They showed the Council had been draining Earth's core energy for decades. Quietly, without Earth's full knowledge. Without permission. James felt his stomach twist. This can't be real," he whispered. Vera looked down, guilt in her eyes. "It's real, James. I worked on these projects years ago. They told me it was safe. That Earth agreed. But they lied to us all." James scrolled through more reports. The energy taken was enough to weaken Earth's natural defenses. It explained strange weather, rising quakes, and the sudden energy shortages Earth had faced in the last 10 years. No wonder Earth had sealed itself off. No one knew. James asked, his voice shaking. "Only the top council leaders," Vera replied. "Vorin and a few others. They kept it hidden. But Earth found out. That's why they're silent. They're not preparing for war. They're protecting themselves." James turned away from the screen, running a hand through his hair. The truth hit him harder than he expected. His own people had been used, lied to, and now the Council was planning a strike to bring Earth back under control. "We have to stop this," James said firmly. Vera nodded. "I've secured a scout ship. Small, fast. We can reach Earth before Vorin's fleet launches." James knew it was risky. The Council would call them traitors. If they were caught, they would never leave this planet alive. But if they did nothing, Earth would face a war it couldn't afford. James turned to Vera and gave a sharp nod. "Let's go." They slipped back into the dark halls, moving fast toward the spaceport. The Council's betrayal burned in James's chest, but he held onto one hope. If they could reach Earth in time, they might stop this before the stars turned red with war. The Council's military dock was one of the most secure places on Astra Prime. Thousands of ships, from small scouts to massive war cruisers, rested on glowing launch pads. Security bots floated along the ceilings. Guards stood at every gate, watching for anyone who didn't belong. James Carter and Vera Tal moved quickly through the lower tunnels beneath the docks. Vera held a small device that jammed the security signals. They had only minutes before someone noticed. "The ship is docked in Bay 17, Vera whispered. James nodded, keeping his head down. His heart was racing. Every step felt louder than it should. He glanced over his shoulder, sure someone was about to spot them. "How far is it?" James asked. "Not far," Vera answered. "But the bay is guarded. We'll have to move fast." They climbed a maintenance ladder and pushed open a hatch. The bright lights of the docks burned their eyes for a moment. James stayed low, hiding behind a cargo crate. Vera crouched beside him, pointing toward a small silver scout ship resting in Bay 17. It was perfect. Small, fast, and armed just enough to defend itself. But two guards stood right in front of it, holding plasma rifles. James studied the area. There were no easy paths, no shadows to hide in. They had to take a risk. "I'll draw them away," Vera said. "You get to the ship." James grabbed her arm. "No, we do this together." Vera looked into his eyes and nodded. They both knew the danger. James pulled a small flash bomb from Vera's pack. He checked the timer. 3 seconds. Enough to blind the guards. He tossed the bomb over the crate. It landed near the guards with a soft beep. A bright white light exploded, and the guards shouted in surprise, covering their eyes. James and Vera ran. They reached the ship's ramp just as the guards recovered. Alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed across the dock. James slammed his fist on the control panel, and the ramp sealed shut behind them. "Go!" James shouted as he ran to the cockpit. Vera jumped into the pilot's seat and powered up the engines. The ship hummed to life. James took the co-pilot seat, strapping in as the dock doors started to close. More guards poured into the bay. A voice shouted over the speakers, "Stand down. You are under council arrest." Vera pushed the ship forward. The small craft lifted off the ground, speeding toward the closing doors. Blaster fire lit up the air behind them. James flinched as shots hit the ship's hull. The shields held, but they wouldn't last long. Come on, come on, Vera muttered, gripping the controls. The doors were almost shut. James braced himself as the ship squeezed through the gap just in time. The metal edges scraped the wings, but they made it. Out in open space, Vera pushed the engines to full speed. The stars stretched into long white lines as they jumped into faster-than-light travel. James let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But their relief didn't last long. Tracking signals, Vera warned. They've locked onto us. James checked the sensors. 3 Council patrol ships were closing in fast. They won't stop, Vera said. They'll chase us all the way to Earth. James clenched his jaw. Then we outrun them. The chase had begun. Hours passed as they zigzagged through asteroid fields and nebula clouds. The patrol ships stayed close, firing when they had the chance. Vera dodged and weaved, pushing the ship beyond its limits. Inside the cockpit, sparks flew from the controls. A warning light blinked red. The ship's shields were failing. James slammed his fist on the console. We can't keep running like this. Vera turned to him. We could turn back. James shook his head. No, we're too close. Earth needs us. Vera's shoulders slumped for a moment. Then she nodded. They both knew the risk. James leaned closer, his voice softer now. Why are you doing this, Vera? You could have stayed safe. You could have walked away. Vera's silver eyes glistened. Because I helped build the machines that hurt your planet. I believed the Council when they told me it was harmless. I was wrong. James nodded slowly. He could see the guilt in her face. But he also saw something else, hope. The ship jolted as another blast rocked them. The nearest patrol ship was almost on top of them now. James gripped the controls. We finished this together. Vera gave him a small, determined smile. Together. They pushed the engines even harder. The scout ship roared forward, diving through a dense asteroid belt. The Council ships followed, but 2 of them clipped the rocks and spun out of control. 1 ship remained. James looked at the star map. Earth was just ahead. The edge of the solar system and the energy shield were in sight. We're almost there, James whispered. The final Council ship fired again. The scout ship's hull sparked and groaned, but they kept going. Vera aimed straight for the shield. The blue energy wall shimmered like a living wave, stretching across space. The ship's alarm screamed. The patrol ship was right behind them now. James looked at Vera. 1 chance. She nodded and pushed the ship forward at full power. The scout ship slammed into the edge of the shield. The cockpit lit up with blue light. The engine screamed. The ship shook like it was tearing apart. And then they broke through. The patrol ship tried to follow, but the shield held firm. The enemy ship bounced off, unable to pass through. James and Vera sat in silence for a moment, staring at the planet ahead. Earth. They had made it. Commander James Carter had not seen Earth in person for 12 long years. Now, as he looked at it through the cockpit window, it felt both familiar and distant, like a home he could no longer touch. The massive energy shield surrounded the solar system like a glowing blue bubble. From inside the ship, it looked peaceful, but James knew what it really was, a wall meant to keep the galaxy out. The ship's systems struggled to adjust. Lights flickered. Engines hissed. Vera Tal kept both hands on the controls, steadying the ship. We're inside, she whispered, but I don't think they trust us. James leaned closer to the sensors. Dozens of defense satellites circled Earth. Long-range weapons locked on them almost immediately. Warning lights flashed on the ship's control panel. They've already seen us, James said. A cold voice came through the radio. Unidentified vessel. You have crossed the boundary of Earth's sovereign space. Power down your engines and prepare for remote shutdown. James recognized the voice. It belonged to President Mira Lang, Earth's current leader. She sounded calm, but her words were clear. Any wrong move, and they would be disabled or destroyed. James grabbed the radio. This is Commander James Carter, he said firmly. Former ambassador to the Galactic Council. I am requesting safe contact. I have critical information. There was a long silence. James could almost feel the tension in the air. The satellites stayed locked on them. Vera glanced at him. They're not answering. James gritted his teeth. He knew Earth had every reason not to trust anything or anyone from the Council. He had to convince them. He pressed the radio again. I know about the energy harvesters. I know what the Council did. We have proof. Please, you have to let us speak. Another long pause. James feared they would open fire. Then, finally, Mira Lang's voice returned. Stand by. James exhaled in relief, though he knew it wasn't over yet. He looked at Vera. At least they're listening. A few minutes later, 2 Earth defense ships approached. They circled the scout ship, scanning it from all sides. James raised his hands, showing no threat. Vera followed his lead. The radio crackled again. Commander Carter, prepare for docking. You will be escorted to the surface for questioning. James nodded. Understood. The defense ships guided them toward a massive space station orbiting Earth. The station was much larger than James remembered. New cannons and shield towers had been added since his last visit. Earth had turned itself into a fortress. As they docked, soldiers in armored suits waited outside the airlock. They held weapons, but their faces were calm. One of them stepped forward as the airlock opened. Commander Carter, the soldier said, "You're to come with us. Your companion, too." James and Vera stepped out slowly. They followed the soldiers down bright metal corridors until they reached a secure meeting room. President Mira Lang stood inside, her arms crossed. Her sharp eyes never left James. She had changed since he last saw her. Her hair was now streaked with gray. Her uniform looked heavier with new rank badges. She carried herself with the weight of someone who had been forced to make hard choices. James bowed his head slightly. "Madam President." Mira nodded once. "You have 2 minutes to explain why I shouldn't throw you in a cell." James didn't waste time. He stepped forward and activated a small device. It projected the stolen council files into the air above the table. The images showed the hidden energy harvesters deep under Earth's surface. They showed the council's secret orders, the stolen energy reports, and the damage done to the planet. Mira watched in silence. James took a deep breath. This is the truth. The Council drained Earth's life for decades. They plan to do more. Vorandrax has already prepared a fleet to attack if you don't surrender. Myra's face remained hard, unreadable. "I only found out days ago," James continued. "Vera helped me get this proof. We risked everything to bring it here. You have to believe me." Mira turned to Vera. "And you? Why should I trust you?" Vera lowered her head. "I worked on the energy project. I believe their lies. I came here to help stop this before it's too late." Mira studied them both for a long moment. Then she turned to one of her officers. "Put the fleet on full alert," she ordered. "Voran won't get near us without a fight." James stepped forward quickly. "Please, don't start a war. Let me try to stop him. Let me speak to the Council fleet. They have a right to know the truth." Mira narrowed her eyes. "You trust them after what they've done?" James shook his head. "No, but I trust that some of them still want peace. We have to try." Mira crossed her arms again, thinking. Then she gave a slow nod. "Very well. You'll have one chance to broadcast to them. But if they fire on us, we fight back." James nodded. "Thank you." Outside the station, the stars seemed to grow darker. The Council fleet was on its way. Time was running out. James Carter stood before the wide glass window of Earth's defense station, staring into space. The stars looked peaceful, but James knew what was coming. Somewhere beyond those distant lights, Chancellor Vorandrax's war fleet was already moving. The room behind him was busy. Earth's officers rushed to their stations. Defense systems powered up. Commanders barked orders. Everyone prepared for battle. President Mira Lang stood beside him, silent but tense. James finally turned to her. "I'm ready." Mira gave him a slow nod. "The channel is open. Say what you have to say, but don't expect them to listen easily." James understood. Voran had spent years covering the truth. Many in the Council fleet still believed Earth was the problem. That Earth had betrayed the galaxy. He would have to change their minds with nothing but words. Mira led him to the broadcast platform. A single microphone stood on the raised floor, surrounded by screens showing the Council fleet approaching. Dozens of massive ships moved in formation, their weapons already charged. James swallowed hard. This was it. Mira nodded to the technician. The channel went live, reaching every ship in the Council fleet. James took a deep breath and spoke. This is Commander James Carter, former ambassador of Earth to the Galactic Council. I speak now to every captain, every soldier, and every citizen who can hear me." His voice echoed through space, reaching the fleets on both sides. "For years, you have been told that Earth betrayed the Council, that we turned our backs on peace, that we locked ourselves away in anger." He paused, letting the silence build. "But the truth has been hidden from you." He lifted the small projector and activated it. The stolen files appeared in the air, seen now by thousands across the stars. These files show what the Council has done to Earth. Secret mining under our oceans. Energy stolen from our planet's core. Resources taken without permission, without honor. The screen showed images of damaged landscapes, weakened energy fields, and the secret orders signed by Chancellor Vorendrax. James continued, his voice steady. "Earth did not rebel. We defended ourselves. We raised a shield to stop the theft. We cut ties because trust had already been broken by those who lied to you, by those who used us." He leaned closer to the microphone. "But there is still a chance for peace. We do not wish for war. We only ask for the truth to be faced, for justice to be done. Stand down. Look at the evidence. Do not let more blood be spilled because of one man's greed." The broadcast ended. The screens went dark. James stood there, heart pounding. Would they believe him? Would they stop? Minutes passed. The Council fleet kept moving closer. Myra's voice broke the silence. "No change in formation. They're still coming." James gritted his teeth. He had done all he could. Then a new voice crackled through the station speakers. "This is Chancellor Vorendrax." The voice boomed, cold and sharp. "Do not listen to these lies. Earth has turned its back on the Council. They hide behind false claims and stolen files. Earth will surrender now or face destruction." Myra's officers turned to her, waiting for the order. James felt his stomach twist. They hadn't listened. Voren still held control. Mira stepped forward, her face like stone. "Prepare to defend Earth. All ships to battle stations." The room exploded into motion. Alarms sounded. Defense shields charged to full power. Earth's fleet launched from the station, moving to block the Council ships. James watched in horror as two great fleets faced each other in space. One wrong move, and the stars would light up with fire. James turned to Mira. "Let me try again." Mira shook her head. "They've made their choice." "Please," James begged. "Give me one more chance." Myra's jaw tightened. She looked out the window, watching the Council fleet close in. Then, finally, she gave a small nod. James rushed back to the microphone and reopened the channel. "Captains of the Council fleet," he called out. "I know you are afraid. I know you have your orders. But I ask you, look at the data again. Look at the truth. Do not follow Voren blindly. You have a choice." He paused, his voice softer now. "We don't have to fight. We don't have to turn these stars into a graveyard. Please stand down." The speakers stayed silent. James closed his eyes. It felt hopeless. Then a new voice spoke. "This is Captain Rylos of the Council ship Orion's Edge, standing down." More voices followed, one after another. "This is Silver Fong, standing down." "This is Star Watcher, standing down." Dozens of Council ships began to break formation. Their weapons powered down. Their engines slowed. Only Voren's flagship and a few loyal warships stayed on course. Myra's officers shouted with hope. The tension in the room lifted, but the threat was not over. Voren's ship pressed forward, charging its main cannons. James turned to Mira, his voice steady. "It's time to face him." Mira nodded. "Agreed." They opened a private channel to Voren's ship. "This ends now," James said. Voren's cold laugh echoed through the speakers. "Come then, Commander," Voren replied. "Let us finish this face to face." The Council warship Obsidian throne hovered just beyond Earth's defense line. It was twice the size of any other ship in the fleet, dark and sharp like a blade floating in space. Its cannons glowed with power, ready to strike. Inside Earth Command Station, James Carter watched the screens. Chancellor Vorendrax had ignored the orders of the other Council captains. He still pressed forward with the few loyal ships that remained. President Mira Lang stood beside him, her arms crossed, her face tight with anger and fear. James broke the silence. "He's forcing us into this. Mira nodded. If he fires, we fire back. We'll stop him, but the cost will be high. James knew she was right. Hundreds, maybe thousands, could die if this turned into a battle. He had to stop it before the first shot was fired. Open the channel, James said. Mira signaled the officer. The private channel connected. Voron's cold face appeared on the screen. His silver skin glowed under the dim lights of his ship. So, you've come to beg again? Voron said with a mocking smile. James stood firm. The fleet stands down, Voron. You've lost. Call off your ships. Voron leaned forward, his eyes burning. I have not lost. Earth belongs to the Council. I will finish this with or without their support. James took a step closer to the screen. The Council knows the truth now. You can't hide it anymore. Voron's face darkened. His voice turned sharp. I built this peace. I held the Council together. Earth's shield. Earth's silence. It's a threat to everything we've built. I will not let one planet destroy my work. You already destroyed it yourself, James said quietly. Voron's fists tightened on the armrests of his chair. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Voron gave the order. All ships, prepare to fire. Mira turned to her officers. All defense stations, lock on target. James felt the air grow heavier. He took one final step toward the screen. His voice dropped to a calm, deadly whisper. Your captains have already turned against you. Your lies are exposed. You have no council left to lead. This is over, Voron. Voron's lips curled into a snarl. His image flickered off the screen. The room shook as the obsidian throne charged its weapons. Alarm screamed. Earth's fleet prepared to fire back. But then something changed. On the station's main screen, James saw small ships break away from Voron's warship. Escape pods, shuttles, officers and crew fleeing their leader. Myra's officer reported in a shocked voice. Sir, his crew is abandoning ship. Voron had been left alone. The obsidian throne powered down. Its cannons went dark. Its engines slowed. The giant warship drifted in silence. A message appeared on the screen. A council security team, supported by several captains, had boarded Voron's ship. Moments later, confirmation came. Voron Drax had been arrested. Cheers erupted across Earth's defense station. Officers hugged one another. Some even cried with relief. Mira let out a long breath and turned to James. It's over. James smiled for the first time in days. Not completely, but this part is. Later that day, the council ships pulled back, agreeing to wait for a full investigation. Earth's shield remained in place, but the threat of war was gone. Mira called for a meeting between Earth and the new council leaders. A long road to rebuild trust had begun, but James knew it would not be easy. The damage done could not be erased overnight. As the meeting ended, James stepped out onto the viewing deck of the station. Vera Tal stood there, staring down at Earth. You did it, Vera said softly. James shook his head. We did it. Vera smiled, though her face showed the same weight James felt. What happens now, she asked. James looked at Earth. The blue and green planet shimmered below. We talk, he said simply. We try again. And this time, we tell the truth. Vera nodded. And us? James glanced at her with a tired smile. We rest for now. They stood together, watching the planet turn slowly in the dark. Peace had not fully returned. There was still much work to do. But for the first time in weeks, the guns were silent. Weeks passed. The war that almost began never came. The council fleet stayed at a distance, waiting for new orders. Chancellor Voron Drax was taken back to Astra Prime in chains. His trial was set to begin in front of every member world. Earth remained locked behind its giant energy shield, but the fear inside had begun to settle. Ships no longer prepared for battle. People returned to their homes. Factories, schools, and farms started running again. But the shield stayed up. President Mira Lang knew the council could not be trusted yet. The betrayal had cut deep. Earth's leaders needed more than empty promises this time. In the days that followed, small messages began to pass through the shield. New leaders from the council reached out, not with threats, but with apologies. Captains who had refused to fight sent their words of peace. The galaxy, it seemed, wanted to fix what Voron had broken. James Carter stood at the center of it all. Every day, new messages arrived, asking for talks, for meetings, for a second chance. James spent hours reading them, wondering who was sincere and who was not. He spent most of his time in the space station, watching over Earth like a silent guardian. He couldn't bring himself to go home yet. Something inside him felt unfinished. One morning, Viratal joined him on the viewing deck. She stood beside him, her silver eyes tired but calm. "You've barely slept," she said softly. James nodded. "There's still so much to do." Vera leaned on the railing, looking out at the stars. "The council is broken, James, but some of them still want peace. You showed them the truth. You gave them a choice. That's more than anyone else could have done." James sighed. "Earth doesn't trust them. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Vera turned to face him. "Do you trust them?" James thought for a long moment. He remembered the lies, the betrayal, the fear. But he also remembered the captains who had stood down, the voices that had called for peace, and the people who had risked their lives to stop Vorin. "I trust that some of them are trying," he said quietly. "That's enough to start." Vera nodded. "And what about you? What's next for James Carter?" James looked down at Earth. The planet was waking up again. Life was returning. The people were moving forward. "I think it's time I go home," he said. Vera smiled. "Good. You've earned it." That afternoon, James stood before President Mira Lang one last time. She thanked him for his service and offered him a place on Earth's new Security Council. But James shook his head. "I need to step away for a while," he told her. "Let others lead the talks. I've done what I could." Mira understood. She knew James had given everything. She shook his hand and watched him leave without a word of protest. Later, aboard a small shuttle, James and Vera prepared for reentry. The energy shield would lower just long enough for them to pass through. As the shuttle broke through the blue light, James watched Earth grow larger in the window. Cities, mountains, oceans, all waiting for a future that was still unclear but possible. The shuttle landed softly on Earth's surface. James stepped out and took a deep breath of real air. It felt heavier than the recycled air of space stations. It smelled of soil and life. He smiled. Vera stood beside him, looking around with quiet wonder. "So this is Earth." James nodded. "Welcome home." The shield slowly rose again behind them, but this time it didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a reminder that peace had to be protected, not forced. As the sun set on the horizon, James whispered to himself, "Not peace yet, but a start." And so, the galaxy turned to a new chapter. One not of war, but of hope.